Obsessive-Compulsive Disorder, OCD. Have you ever wanted a dictator to live in your mind? It might sound strange to start a video with such a question, but that's exactly how it feels to have OCD. Let's call our dictator a pretty abstract name. Adolf. Adolf is constantly urging you to clean, check, and organize everything. Unlike typical nagging, you feel compelled to obey these commands, not because you want to, but because you feel fully obligated to follow your great Führer's commands. Living with OCD means experiencing persistent, unwanted thoughts or fears that don't go away, like having a mental itch you can't scratch, and the itching only becomes worse. These thoughts evolve into compulsions, repetitive behaviors, or mental acts aimed at reducing anxiety or preventing something terrible. For instance, you might have an intense fear of germs and getting sick, leading you to wash your hands repeatedly, clean your house multiple times a day, and use disinfectants excessively. This is called hypochondria, by the way. OCD is quite common, affecting about 79 million people worldwide, so it's not that bad. I'm sure you've been in a situation where everyone in a room is laughing at a joke, but you can't grasp the humor or understand what they're talking about, making you feel like you're on a different planet. This is a common experience for people with autism spectrum disorder. Now, I'm not saying you have autism just because you can't understand jokes. It's just a possibility, lads, no offense. ASD is a neurological condition that affects communication, interaction, and perception. It's like having a brain that operates differently from most people's, causing delays in processing information or an intense focus on details others might overlook. If you have ASD, social interactions, making eye contact, or even understanding plain jokes can be challenging, nearly impossible. However, you might also have intense interests, exceptional creativity, or a remarkable memory for details. Autism is a spectrum, meaning each individual has a unique combination of traits and characteristics. Some people on the spectrum might be nonverbal, while others are highly articulate. Some excel in areas like math or music, whereas others might struggle with academic or occupational tasks. ASD affects about 1% of the global population. While there's no cure, there's no need for one. It can be managed through behavioral therapy, educational interventions, and medications to address symptoms like anxiety, irritability, and hyperactivity. It doesn't make you weak or wicked, it makes you different from others, and that isn't bad at all. Eating disorder, a psychological representation of gluttony. It's like an invisible backseat driver convincing you that something is wrong with your body. This condition leads to an unhealthy relationship with food, much like a toxic relationship any one of us probably had. That doesn't mean your food will blackmail you or abuse you, at least it shouldn't. For example, some people with eating disorders may believe they need to be extremely thin regardless of how slim they already are, always finding minor imperfections in their bodies. Their brain urges them to restrict food intake or follow extreme diets, such as eating just one salad leaf a day. Conversely, others may experience binge eating episodes, consuming large amounts of food in one sitting and then feeling so guilty that they try to purge by vomiting or abusing laxatives, additionally damaging their stomach and guts with such inappropriate food obsession. This harmful relationship with food often stems from deep emotional issues like anxiety, trauma, depression, or low self-esteem, or sometimes even simple stress. Because let's be real here, food is nice, and eating is nice. And when you've had a terrible day, the fastest way you can enhance those happy levels is by eating something tasty, usually something sweet. In the United States alone, over 14 million people suffer from eating disorders, and it only proves my point that stress is, in fact, a real and significant problem. And some of us deal with this problem by turning to fast food and extra calories. A century of fat, stressed, and depressed bastards. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Here's Bob. Bob served his country well, fought in wars, and after a long service, he's finally back home with his wife and kids, alive, well, and happy. But something just feels wrong, like an uncanny valley effect. Some might call it echoes of war. Medics call it PTSD. After countless cruelties he saw on the fields of war, Bob just can't imagine that he is not in the hellfire of battle. A sudden whistle, a loud pop, a specific phrase, or a gesture that left an emotional scar might kick in at any random moment, bringing back those terrifying memories. The mere thought of taking a gun in your hand sends shivers down your spine, the briefest explosion is now taken as the start of bombing, and a scream of pain from a kid down the street due to a little cut will remind you of fallen brothers in battle, and so on. PTSD is like your brain's way of forcing you to relive a traumatic experience repeatedly, just for the fun of it. It doesn't occur out of the blue, but starts after experiencing significant trauma. Any reminder of that event, be it sight, sound, or smell, can trigger intense reactions like sweating, fear, rapid breathing, or even fainting. One moment you're going about your day, and the next you're overwhelmed by flashbacks and nightmares, making you feel like you're back on the battlefield. It doesn't have to be connected to war traumas though. It can be a car crash, intense pain, or something else. I just showed the most popular and the most cruel example. Schizophrenia. Did you ever have, or maybe still do have, a tulpa? An imaginary friend only you could see or hear, who disappeared as you grew older and realized they were just a figment of your imagination. But sometimes, childhood friends don't go away so easily. Originally, a tulpa is a concept from Tibetan Buddhism and found in later traditions of mysticism and the paranormal. It refers to a materialized being or thought form, typically in human form, created through spiritual practice and intense concentration. But for people with schizophrenia, they don't even have to practice or concentrate. They just can't get rid of their in-mind friends. Your own head becomes a haunted house, and you can't even predict what those non-real friends may do to you. People with this diagnosis can see, hear, or talk to this person even when nobody else can. It's like a hidden switch in your mind. One moment you're absolutely normal, talking with friends or just hanging out, and the next moment you start seeing fourth-dimensional beings all around you. Schizophrenia also involves intense delusions, where someone might believe they are a secret royal family member or a new James Bond on a mission to save the world. It's like playing chess with your own mind with constantly changing rules, jumping from a regular game to some wicked hallucination, so you can neither win nor lose. This mental disorder affects about 1 in every 300 people. Sadly, there's no cure for our minds. Yet. ADHD. Imagine walking through a bustling city street where vibrant advertisements flash, musicians play, and people chat animatedly. Your attention jumps from one attraction to another, making it near impossible to focus on any single thing. This is what living with ADHD feels like, a whirlwind of constant mental stimulation. If you have ADHD, you often find it challenging to pay attention, stay organized, and control impulses. It's as if your mind is a highway, with thoughts always racing, crashing into each other, unable to slow down, no matter how hard you try. Your brain is flooded with ideas and distractions, pulling you in multiple directions at once. ADHD affects between 129 million and 366 million people worldwide, including children, teenagers, and adults. There are different types of ADHD. Inattentive ADHD, where you struggle to concentrate and finish tasks, often getting distracted easily and having a short attention span, compared to a goldfish. Hyperactive impulsive ADHD, where you find it hard to stay still and control your impulses, feeling like a ticking bomb about to explode with energy. Combined ADHD, and the name says it all. It's a mix of everything ADHD possibly has to offer. Managing ADHD typically involves organizational techniques to help improve focus and control those frisky impulses. Paranoia. It's normal to feel scared or suspicious of people occasionally, especially when there's a valid reason. However, it's not quite alright to feel this way all the time. For someone with paranoia, these feelings of fear and suspicion are magnified immensely. Imagine being at work and seeing 2 colleagues talking quietly in a corner. You might think they are discussing personal matters, but a person with paranoia would believe they are plotting to get them fired or even killed. Or both. Can't say what's worse. It's like your brain has turned into a suspicious detective, seeing threats everywhere, even when there's no real reason to be afraid. You might suspect that everyone and everything around you is out to get you. Coupled with irrational fear and mistrust, you may also become easily offended, defensive, and often hostile, argumentative, and aggressive. You can get this wonderful thing thanks to the lucky genetics, traumatic life events, and extremely stressful situations. Dyslexia. Have you ever had this feeling that even though you're talking in the same language with a person, you don't quite understand them, and you are thinking either you turned deaf or the person is really having some trouble speaking? That's probably dyslexia, my silver tongue friends. Dyslexia affects the part of your brain that processes language, making it more difficult to learn how to read, write, or spell. For someone with dyslexia, words and numbers often appear like a jumbled mess that's hard to understand. Imagine trying to make pancakes using a cookbook. While the recipe is clear to most, a person with dyslexia might see it as a confusing scramble of letters. Writing down their thoughts or even copying a text can be very slow, challenging, and full of childish errors that no one would expect you to make. However, dyslexia is not about intelligence. People with dyslexia are just as smart as everyone else, but they need to be taught differently. They often use tools like phonetic programs to help break up words into sounds, audiobooks to aid with reading, and speech-to-text software to assist with writing. So it's pretty manageable. At least it's not that scary. Sometimes it's even cute. But not when they look like creeps that just got their tongues cut off. Hell no.